My name is Adam Reynolds. I'm the Chief Cruelty Investigator here at the Houston SPCA, and I'm with my friend Amanda. She's an 8-month-old that will hopefully be soon to be adoptable. She was picked up on one of our cruelty cases. These are cases that, just like the 8,500 other cases that we get each year, they all have individual stories, and this one was a person who had a lot of dogs and was unable to care for them. So our investigators had to intervene and help rescue this sweet girl. So over the next 30 minutes, what I hope to do is to help you learn a little bit more about what we do here at the Houston SPCA, not only the investigations team, but also our 24-hour animal rescue service. Being in charge of the field services team, I have the distinct honor and privilege of leading 10 cruelty investigators that not only respond to 8,500 calls each year for everything you can imagine for animal abuse, everything ranging from simple neglect all the way to some of the more horrific cases that we sometimes have to face. I'm also in charge of the rescue team, which we have 5 rescue technicians that operate an ambulance service for Harris County, where we pick up severely injured, unowned animals. Of course, if they're owned animals and we can find the owner, then it's their responsibility as a pet owner to take care of those animals. And of course, if they refuse, then they have to meet my investigators. So we're on the campus right now for the Houston SPCA. We're a campus for all animals, not just dogs, cats, puppies, and kittens. Daily, we run into anything ranging from lions and tigers and bears all the way down to scorpions and tarantulas. We see a little bit of everything each day, which makes this job always rewarding and also always interesting. So with me, I have some of the tools that my investigators carry. Of course, they each have their own individual units. All of my investigators always carry a cat net. Of course, when we're talking about rescuing animals, we always want to use the minimum amount of equipment. What we'd like to do, obviously, is just be able to handle the animal initially, maybe wrap them in a towel if they're a little more aggressive. Of course, the first thing we want to do, especially for canines, is, always have our leashes ready. We'd like to be able to leash them to bring them into our vehicles. But of course, if that's not practical or safe for either the investigator or the animal, we have equipment such as, a cat net, which is really a simple piece of equipment. It's just a mesh bag, really, where we can easily, quickly, and safely contain the animal and then be able to place it into a carrier for transportation back to the Houston SPCA. Of course, if we're talking about larger animals or dogs, we also have catch poles. Again, these are pieces of equipment that we don't necessarily go straight to. We always want to use the minimum amount of coercion to get the animal safely into our kennels and into our vehicles. Of course, once the animals are in our vehicles, we're going to rush them to the Houston SPCA, where we have an incredible veterinary team of veterinarians, vet nurses, and vet techs that are going to get these animals that we bring in, the care that is needed. And then the ultimate goal, obviously, is to get them healthy and then get them adoptable. One of the other aspects of my job that I really enjoy is helping lead the disaster management team. Of course, this year we've been pretty lucky in the storms that have hit the Houston area, but our friends to the east aren't usually as fortunate. We always want to assist where we can, and as far as our resources will take us. So we have the distinct pleasure as well to be able to send teams to Louisiana, especially during Hurricane Ida's and some of the other storms this year, to help them mitigate through these storms. Of course, all of my investigators are skilled and trained in disaster rescue techniques. Many of them have been to Swiftwater rescue training. So, equipment that we always carry with us as well is our safety equipment. The Houston SPCA has 8 rescue boats that we can operate, that we can also input into the ICS system if it's during a disaster in this area, and of course always transfer them or transport them to other areas that are in need as well.
Are you ready for a question, Adam?
Sure.
So Jacob wants to know, when it comes to filing an animal cruelty report, how does he know when he's supposed to file one or if he's not sure?
Sure. Well, Jacob, I would say thank you for the question first. I would say that anytime you believe that something is happening, please report it. Let us, on the investigation team, let us decide if it is a case or not, but we would obviously much rather err on the side of getting that information and being able to investigate to see if something is going on. Of course, nothing we do on the investigation team is subjective. We follow Texas state law, and that's it. I joke, but it's true that at least 2 or 3 times a week, I get calls of my neighbor has a dog and they don't even talk to it. And while I think that's horrible, I think all dogs should be inside a house sitting on a couch. That's not what Texas state law says. Texas state law says animals are property, and here's how to treat your property. So, I would still, again, to answer your question, I would much rather have that information, allow us time to investigate to see if it is an actual violation of Texas state law.
Okay, that was great, Adam. Kristen wants to know, how do you suggest best to approach an animal that may seem injured, or you're just not sure if it's been neglected or not?
Sure. I would say, obviously, always proceed with caution. If an animal is injured, it can become fractious. It's having the worst day of its life, probably. So be careful when you're approaching it. If you feel like your safety is in danger, feel free to take photographs. We're more than happy to take photographs to better react to the situation and better judge on how we need to approach it. But your safety should come first as well.
Michelle wants to know about the actual reporting. Do you all have to tell the person that you're investigating who reported them?
Absolutely not. So when you file a report, we're going to ask for questions about yourself as well as the reporting party. We're going to want to know what your phone number is. The only reason we need that information is so when my investigator gets to the location and in the process of their investigation, they may have questions for you that can definitely assist with the process of the investigation and then seeking obviously civil or criminal charges. So we want that information from you, but we do not share it with the suspect. We are not a government agency, so we do not fall under the Freedom of Information Act. So all of that information will remain anonymous.
Alexi wants to know, is it okay if she brings an animal she thinks is neglected, like a neglected stray, or looks like maybe there's been some abuse? Is it better to call the Houston SPCA's investigations team first or file a report? Or is it okay if she brings the animal to us?
Well, I would say, again, that depends on the case. So we never want reporting parties to interfere in the process of the investigation. So if you see an animal that is being neglected, please do not remove that animal, especially when you know that it has an owner. Now you've manipulated our evidence, and that could throw off our case. So in those cases, I would definitely suggest that you contact Houston SPCA, let our investigators respond to it. Now, if you come across an injured animal that is not on private property and you believe that it needs medical care, you can absolutely bring it to the Houston SPCA, bring it to our rehoming center, and they will bring it into the system and have it treated by a veterinarian.
Adam, maybe you could share the difference between law enforcement and Houston SPCA animal cruelty investigators and what's similar.
Sure. I'll take it one step further. We'll talk about animal control as well. So we are licensed private investigators. So licensed by the state of Texas in order to conduct investigative operations. We are skilled and trained in understanding animal cruelty specifically. So all of my investigators have been to some level of the National Academy of Cruelty Investigative course put on through the University of Missouri or Code 3. There are 3 levels to those, and they extend their credentials every year they're here. We do that because in order to successfully prosecute these cases, you need someone that has the specific knowledge about cruelty investigative. Nothing against law enforcement, but the average patrol officer does not may see an animal cruelty case once in their career. My investigators are responding to, again, 8,500 every year. So we're highly skilled and specially trained specifically for animal cruelty. As licensed private investigators, there's 2 things we don't do. We don't carry weapons, and I can't get a court order or a warrant. So in order to do that, I rely on our law enforcement partners. We have 2 contract deputies through Precinct 1 Constable's Office that work here at the Houston SPCA in order for us to do that successfully in Harris County. But again, we operate in the 10 surrounding counties as well. So those are relationships with law enforcement entities that we have to build and expand upon each year in order to do the most for the animals. The way I describe our program is, the way I perceive my investigators' participation in this community is education first. Not everybody understands what animal cruelty laws are. So it is fine with me for my investigators to respond to a case, to make contact with an owner, to tell them what Texas state law says, explain to them how they can become compliant with that, and then move forward. That is completely fine. And that's what I want. I just want people to follow what Texas state law says. But if they, again, refuse the law, then we have to involve law enforcement and ultimately seek a civil seizure warrant and remove property.
So Sylvia had an interesting question. She wanted to know if you all track, if say some animals have been seized due to cruelty or neglect, do you all track if a neighbor brings more animals in? Like, should they report them again, or? Absolutely.
Again, if we have people who are continually bringing in animals from a location, we want to know about that because there might be, a bigger problem than just what you see on the surface. So we absolutely would want to know that information. That might cause us to have to do a welfare check on that property or that pet owner to see what's going on to better help the animals that are in their area.
So Stacy wanted to know. She follows us on social media and sees all the great work that you and all your teams are doing, and she wants to know about criminal charges. Do we work with the district attorney's office, or how do we handle that?
Sure, we absolutely do. So again, quick law class, right? There's two types of warrants basically. There's civil seizure warrants and there's criminal search warrants. Civil seizure warrants are covered under what we call Health and Safety Code 821. Health and Safety Code 821 says that once a warrant is submitted to a person, that person has 10 days to take that warrant before a judge. So once that happens, basically that hearing is basically a custody hearing for the animal. Once that is heard and decided upon, if the individual doesn't like the results, they can appeal that case. They take it up to the next higher court. They get their appeal. Once that decision from that judge is rendered, then that's it. There's no more appeals. There's no more taking it higher than that. So, worst case scenario for the animal in question would be it's in our care for about 21 days, and then it can get adopted and then, into a better home. If we were to seize property under a criminal search warrant, that animal is now a material piece of evidence in a criminal trial, and we would have to hold it until that criminal trial is heard. Unfortunately, living in the fourth largest city in the United States, we have a backlog in our court system. So I can tell you that we are just now hearing cases that are almost 4 years old. So that is not in the best interest of the animal for them to be, housed here for that long period of time. So we always seize civilly first. Once we win, the animal gets adopted and gets out of here. And at that time, then we file criminal charges. We have a great assistant district attorney who works well with us and our local law enforcement partners. And she is serious about, taking animal charges. So we have seen a drastic influx of not only prosecuted cases, but successfully prosecuted criminal cases.
Jamie wants to know, based on different circumstances of neglect and cruelty, is there a different agency that we call, or can people rely on calling the Houston SPCA and filing a cruelty report across the board?
Absolutely. You can always file reports through us. We are going to take every report seriously. We are going to investigate every report to its fullest. And our ultimate goal not only is the protection of the animal and to get the animal successfully adopted, but also to make sure that people who do these acts are held accountable.
So Natalie has an interesting question. She was interested in knowing, because you have such a large team and then you have rescue as well, how do you prioritize as the calls are just pouring in? How do you prioritize and cover such a large area?
Sure. So if you can imagine 8,500 cases divided amongst 10 investigators is a ridiculous amount of cases. Right now, my average investigator is probably actively working about 125 cases. So that means every day they have to prioritize their schedule to make sure that we're getting the worst of the worst. So those are, the abandonments, the animals that are, starving to death inside apartments. We want to make sure that we can intervene as quickly as possible. But that means that, things are also going to have to get, pushed to the side until we can complete those. I will also say, I have an incredible team and they work well together. So, when one investigator might have a slow day with some just simple neglect cases or, cruel confinement issues or, length of restraint, they are more than willing to put off what's on their schedule and jump in and help the other members of the team.
So Shelley was wondering, she's filed cruelty reports before, and she wants to know why she can't find out the what's going on, since she's the one who called it in and she's worried.
Sure. So again, we want to protect the reporting party as well as the suspect until that case is going to the civil or criminal process. We have to maintain the protection of all parties. Again, until we can establish probable cause and until a civil seizure warrant is obtained, that person is innocent, until proven guilty. So also, we don't want to muddle our investigation by providing additional information. So, while I do understand that, you reported the case, you want to know what's happening with it, we're not going to provide that information until that case is closed and prosecuted as well.
Jacqueline wanted to know, is there any kind of case that we don't respond to? Like, what would be some reasons that we wouldn't?
So I can think of, a case where, for whatever reason, we didn't have the ability or the equipment to respond. That could be one, but I would say those are few and far between. I can tell you in the 4 years that I've been here, I can't think of anything that we've passed on. If we can't do it initially, we're going to find a way. We're going to work with the rest of our staff here at the Houston SPCA, and we're going to figure out a way to be able to provide that animal whatever care it needs or respond to whatever level of the investigative process that might fall into.
So Dana wanted to know, what are the specific counties that we respond to, and what should she do if it's not a county that we service?
So if you can imagine Harris County, everything that touches Harris County in all directions, we cover. So everything from Galveston County all the way west to Washington County, north to San Jacinto, and south to the Fort Bend area. We cover everything. If that is outside of our area, those cases normally come to me. I will reach out to local law enforcement and tell them about the case that's been reported and then give it to them. Again, as a private nonprofit, we can only go as far as our assets take us. So, I'm more than willing to help work with them, just in a consultation method to help them with the case. But there have been cases where we have been able to go outside even that boundary to assist law enforcement when we're asked.
So Joe wanted to know, what's the most interesting or strangest case that you've had to deal with since you've been here?
Wow.
Pick one.
So there's so many. I always go back to probably my second week here when I get a call from one of my investigators who says, we have we have an abandonment at an apartment. And my first thought was, okay, like we do 10 of those a day, no big deal. And he says, no, you don't understand. There's spiders and there's scorpions. So, of course, my interest is piqued automatically. All of us want to go make location to see this, train wreck of a case that we know we're going to get involved in. Sure enough, the gentleman had abandoned his apartment with 66 tarantulas and scorpions. Luckily, they were all individually housed in their own environments, so we weren't having to handle them on scene. But we brought them back to the Houston SPCA. Our veterinarians are incredible. We also invited the zoo to come out as well to assist with that case. The biggest lesson learned that I learned from that as well, though, is we're a camp patrol animals, but you're not going to see us adopting out scorpions and tarantulas. I can just tell you that right now. So in those cases, we find sanctuaries where they can go out and live the rest of their happy bug life. So we found 2 sanctuaries west of San Antonio where they're off living the life now.
So Adam, because we are live streaming on social media, can you share what are maybe some of the negative things that can happen to a case if people are reporting on social media, like why they should not report on social media.
Sure. So, I mean, again, when you start announcing things to social media, more people are going to become involved. In the animal community, we have a full spectrum of people who want to help. Sometimes those people who want to help don't necessarily want to do that in constraints of the law. We have a report of, let's say, a dog in a backyard that doesn't have food, water, and shelter. So we have, while it's, the best intentions of having people come and, I'm going to feed the animal over the fence, or I'm going to give it water, that's ruining the case that we have. So we would much rather prefer you to just file the report and then let us act on it. I can assure you, we're not going to let the animal suffer through it, but at least if we go there and we do feeding and process, or we do some watering, we're going to take videos of it to show the angst of the animal and the aggression towards food, or the desperate need for food. And we can use that as part of our evidence as well. Plus, we know how much food the animal has ingested, and that's going to help us, especially when we do our body conditioning score and weight of the animal, should we seize it and bring it back here for a full examination.
So, Adam, can you maybe walk through the whole process? I think they would be really curious to know. You get the initial report all the way to bringing them back here. What happens when you bring them back here?
Sure. So it's a lot of rabbit holes to go down because, again, there's no typical day, there's no typical case. But let's say, on average, again, like I said, the primary thing is for our investigators to educate first. So that's what we want. So it might look like us knocking on a door. Hopefully we make contact with a suspect. We make contact with the animal. We provide them information on how to comply. We may leave them a notice to say, these are the steps that you need to do. This animal needs to be seen by a licensed veterinarian in the next few days. Have those records provided to us so we can see that that's happened and we can see what's going on in the animal. If they refuse that, we're going to show up a second time normally. When we show up the second time, if we see the same circumstances, we're going to leave probably a shorter notice. Usually in the communication after the second notice and in between the second and third is when we're having that communication with law enforcement. We're telling them what we saw, what we've asked them to do, what they have done, what they haven't done. And that starts that process of this may turn into a case where we're going to need a civil seizure warrant in order to remove the animal. So the third visit, if they still haven't complied, we're there with law enforcement. They're going to get served a warrant. We're going to remove the property, the animal. The animal is going to be brought back here to the Houston SPCA, where it will be seen by our licensed veterinarians. It will get a full cruelty exam that tells us everything that's going on with the animal, because we want science to show the same things that we saw on scene. That animal will be held here for 10 days until it's heard in front of a JP judge. Once we go to that hearing, hopefully the suspect will show up as well, and we'll be there with the county attorney. We'll provide our testimony about what we saw, what we did. We will ask them to, allow them to ask us questions as well. Then we'll allow the suspect to provide their testimony. Once that happens, the judge is going to make his or her decision and give us an order of disposition on the judgment of that case. As soon as that happens, the clock is ticking. We've got 10 days for them to file they have 10 days to file for an appeal. Once that 10 days is over, if they haven't filed for an appeal, that means the animal is ours. We release it from court hold. It gets whatever other treatments it needs to be successfully adopted, and it's put on the adoption floor to go find a home.
Wow, that's a lot. And that's just like one particular.
Right. So, and that's just a civil process. So once that part is over, once we've won the animal and it's ours, then my investigator takes all that information that they have from the civil court hearing and reproduces it, creates a criminal packet, and that packet is turned into our assistant district attorney. We allow her to make the decision whether she wants to take on criminal charges or not. And if she does, then we wait to get a subpoena and go tell our story to another judge.
So Mark was wondering what the legal process is for, like, say you come up and you see an animal that obviously has been neglected or possibly abused. Why can't y'all why go through all those hoops? Why can't you just take the animal?
Because it could be somebody's property. And if it's a stray animal, then absolutely. We can remove the animal as a stray, bring it back here, hold it for a stray hold, and then in that process seek criminal charges. We absolutely can do that as well. Again, kind of going back to one of the other questions, the difference between us And animal control, the purpose of animal control is to protect people from animals. So when you have a stray animal that's a nuisance to your neighborhood, or if you have a dog that is going around, snapping at kids, that's an animal control issue. You're trying to protect humans from an animal. We're here to protect animals from people. So animals that are being neglected, animals that are being abused, animals that are not being cared for in accordance with Health and Safety Code 821.
Is there anything else that you want to add about that you want people as far as the process of reporting cruelty? Is it better to take it by the phone or do it online so you can upload photos? Do y'all have a preference?
Yeah, I'll take whatever I can get. I love the online reporting. It gives you time to think about your answers when you put them in. It also immediately filters out to my investigators. So again, 10 investigators over 10 counties. We all have our little chunk of Southeast Texas. So as soon as you file an online report, it's automatically going to go straight to that investigator with no other process in between. But if you need to, absolutely, please call 713-869-7722 to file a cruelty report over the phone.
Awesome. Well, we're like right at 30 minutes. We're all out of time.
Great. Thanks.